This sounds like a Hollywood script.
And we strap up. I tell everyone, kit up, as if we're doing a direct action mission.
My heart rate are through the roof right now. Just imagining you going at this guy. I mean, taking an amazingly dangerous risk. Hello and welcome to Best Case, Worst Case. This is Jim Clemente, former New York City prosecutor, retired FBI profiler, and writer-producer on CBS's Criminal Minds. And with me today is...
Hi, everybody. It's former state and federal prosecutor Francie Hakes, and Jim and I are in studio again together and very excited to welcome back our nail-biting, generating, crazy, somewhat former DEA agent, Carson Ulrich. Hi, Carson.
Hi, glad to be back. 25 years of DEA service, retired, and glad to be retired.
Yeah, I hear you.
Well, Carson, I don't know you that well, but I have to say, I'm glad you're retired. It makes me nervous just to talk to you.
All right.
So when we last left, we were in the Afghanistan desert. You have a source who's driving around a guy who's on the hit list for the military and DEA called Maftoon, and he rides around with a bomb vest, suicide vest, and maybe some massive tank mines, which could obliterate the vehicle that they're in, and they're not riding on very smooth roads. Is that correct?
That is correct. And obviously, in our mind, the bigger threat is that the mines would successfully make it into Afghanistan, where they would be placed as roadside bombs and could kill a lot of people.
Well, that's a terrible threat, and I hope we can get to the bottom of what happened with respect to this.
So, Carson, I'm nervous because this all sounds like a disaster waiting to happen. Do you all know when your source goes and picks up Maftoon?
We do, but there's a window, and we know that that window is going to be over multiple days, where the source will be required to drive into Pakistan. They'll house him in Pakistan. They'll search his car. They'll conduct their investigation. And when they feel safe, they'll have him drive them back into Afghanistan. But we also...
Sorry, I was just going to say that sounds like a really risky time for your source. And someone who's got to be nervous, maybe hasn't done this sort of thing before, but is effectively going undercover with an organization not friendly to people like him if they're found out.
No, they would torture him and kill him for sure. He is very nervous. He's nervous on multiple different levels, both sides. He's nervous about being discovered by the Taliban. He's nervous about the military finding out that Maftoon's in his car and dropping a 500-pound bomb on him.
And he's nervous, I'm sure, because he's driving around with somebody with a suicide vest on and a bunch of tank mines that could obliterate the car and you'd never find anything but pink mist.
That is correct.
Okay, so why is he doing this? Why is your source doing this? Again,
when we first interview and cultivate a source, we begin to try to find out what is the motivation for the source. Often it's monetary, and we have to catalog that when we're documenting the source. So one, it was money, and two, this source enjoyed it. He had the kind of James Bond mentality. He liked to be part of something bigger and more important than just himself.
Wow.
He didn't like the Taliban, and this was a way for him to have an influence or empowered him to take action against it, where he couldn't do it himself alone.
So he's what we would officially call a wannabe.
Kind of, yeah, in some ways.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't want to carry a badge and a gun. He recognizes, but there's a lot of Afghans that were very patriotic in what they did for their country and were very brave. And so I would classify him as one of those.
Yeah, well, I'll definitely say he's braver than me. I am not the kind of guy who wants to drive around with a bunch of tank mines in the back of my car.
Right. Not many people are.
Definitely not. So you have a window of time. What happens when you find out that window, I guess, has been activated? He's inside.
Well, the source shows up on foot at the base, and he walks there. And our first question is, where the hell's your car? And he tells us his story. He says he got to an Afghan police checkpoint, and the police are very corrupt. And it's just very natural. The corruption is rampant. And he did not have his paperwork with him. He left it at home. And out of nervousness, he was afraid that the police would discover something about his car, and he would be discovered and they might injure him or who knows what would happen. So he simply got out of his car and left it at the police checkpoint.
Wait. He left the car that is full of sophisticated detection equipment.
Yes. So we can track the car. We know where it is. It's just, it's not in the possession of our informant.
So now you have to go recover the car, right?
We do. We communicate this to the ODB, to the major.
ODB, come on, let's tell what that means.
The ODB is the Operation Detachment Bravo.
Of course. We all know that. But what does that mean?
It is a Special Forces team. It is the Special Forces unit that we are living with and working with. And we had been in rehearsals for a number of days of doing an aerial VI, an aircraft vehicle interdiction, where we were going to fly next to this vehicle, shoot out the engine of the vehicle. We didn't need to. We could just simply kill switch it. But then we were going to drop a dog and have the dog fly into the window of this car, attack Maftoon. If he didn't blow himself up, the dog was going to eventually try to pull him out of the car. And we're nervous about getting near him, but we're trying to get to the point where we can give him a chance to give himself up. we can get the dog to rip his clothes off and he shows he doesn't have a suicide vest, we'll take him into custody.
Wait, this sounds like a Hollywood script. I'm amazed that the plan of what you're going to do once you get Maftoon in the car is. That sounds outrageous, Carson.
Yeah, but that was the safest way to do it. One, to keep the CS alive or the CI alive, to try to isolate Maftoon, to force him to act. If he's going to act by detonating himself, he's going to do it when there's a Belgian Malaway chewing on his collarbone. And so it was our plan to set in motion. We wanted to create, safe distance so that if he blew himself up, we wouldn't be injured. But we're not interested in getting killed and trying to capture this guy.
All right, but wait a minute. You don't even have the car. I don't understand how we got to this point when you don't even have the car yet.
Well, you're asking me to explain who the ODB is. These are the individuals that we've been training and practicing this mission with, and we're poised to act when the car is taken, or the CS actually abandons the car and walks back to the to Jalalabad base, leaving the car at the police checkpoint.
I just want to ask, how far did he walk?
That was probably 7 kilometers from the checkpoint to the base. So, 4 miles.
Okay, so
not too bad.
So he's motivated. So he's at the base. He tells you the car's at the checkpoint. What do you guys do? Because without the car, you have no plan.
Well, we tell the ODB this, and they're like, all right, we're done. We're dead in the water. And they can't even leave the base without a CONOP, a concept of operations, that has so many signatures and checks and processes. It takes them 48 to 72 hours if everything is streamlined and agreed. To even leave the base. To even leave the base. For any reason at all. Could they had an Afghan 7-Eleven. We need a CONOP to go there to buy a burrito. But they're hamstrung.
Okay, something tells me you don't have that kind of restriction.
We do not.
Carson never has that kind of restriction.
No, we don't. We're in many ways we're cowboyish, but we're very result oriented, and we're on a mission. We're hunting, and we're not going to give up. Who would want us to give up? Who listening right now says, "Yeah, we want you guys to give up"? No one does.
I have a feeling we're going to find out what you did next.
So what we do is we find out that there is a police general who oversees all of Jalalabad that has this car at his base, and he is holding the vehicle. And what we don't want is a direct link or direct line between the car and Americans.
Right.
Because if it gets back to the Taliban, if the Americans are asking about this car, not only is the mission done, they're going to kill our informant.
Okay, so what do you do?
We use our interpreter. And the interpreter, who's a police officer himself, calls the police station. And he's saying, hey, there was a mix-up. I'm with the governor's office. You guys have a vehicle, and we need to get that car back. And they're like, no, that's our car. We're investigating the car, and we're keeping the car. It's one of the spoils of war. Not going to give the car back.
Okay, so that's obviously something quite different than what happens in U.S. police circles, but go ahead.
It is. So our interpreter knows the guy that does the food service for this police base. And he says that the general that runs the base is not only corrupt, but he's violent, and he's a total, if you excuse my language, prick. He provides very good food for this base. The general won't pay him. He says they don't like his food. And he says, no, I know they like it. He says, if you want to continue to keep this contract, you have to pay me $500 a month myself so that you can have this contract. And he says he doesn't make enough to pay him $500 a month, but he doesn't have a choice. The contract is lucrative enough that he still can barely make enough money. So he has to go and kiss the ring and pay this guy $500 a month. Now, this is the guy that has our car.
Bribable, maybe it sounds to me like.
We don't bribe anyone. We have a whole different way of dealing with things.
Why don't you tell us about that?
So what we do is for 3 days, while we're still in the window of still being able to salvage this thing and get it back there, we're having our interpreter try to convince this general to give us back the car. And he finally says, no. He's only talking to another Afghan. He's treating him very badly. He says, no, there's another general in Kabul that had his car stolen, and this is his vehicle. He's lying. We know it's not his. It's never in Kabul. It's a special forces vehicle. And we're going to fly this vehicle back to give it to this other general in Kabul because we're returning his car. And so I'm listening to this conversation. So finally, after 4 days, I take over and say, listen, you tell him who I am and that I'm standing next to you and translate what I'm saying. So he does. He tells him, look, the American who runs a fast team says that's his car. The American's at the airbase. And we are going to come over there right now to get our car back.
But I thought that was really dangerous to put any American stamp on this car because the source then might be associated with Americans and killed.
It is, but we don't have a choice. According to this guy, we've been trying for 4 days to ask for the car back. It's not his. And he's going to fly it to Kabul and give it to a general. And we don't want to drop bombs on an Afghan general in Kabul. We want to drop bombs on Maftoon. So I'm exasperated and I'm very upset. I'm angry. So I'm going to make an example of this guy.
Okay, so how does he respond to this?
He just sits silent on the phone, like in disbelief. And I tell him we are en route right now. I'm giving him notice that he better not leave the base because we'll find him. And we strap up. I tell everyone, kit up as if we're doing a direct action mission in gun trucks.
And Carson, our listeners have seen pictures of you all kitted out, at least as you may have looked before this mission. I wouldn't want to be the police commander at this point.
And I'm just wondering, Carson, what do your bosses think about this, or do they know?
They do not know anything about it. They don't know anything about it because this could go really bad. They could shoot at us, and we'll be in a firefight in a police base with Afghan police officers.
Okay, sounds like an interesting day. So you roll. What happens?
We roll heavy. We roll right into the base, and we take it over. We have like 7 trucks. We have heavy weapons on the trucks, a number of personnel, and we roll right in, and we go right to the headquarters. We park our trucks out front of the headquarters, and I take like eight or 9 guys in with me. And I said, once we get in, guys, just lock everything down. And there is a line of Afghans waiting to go in and kiss the ring of this guy. And included in that line is the guy that runs the food service because he recognizes our Terp. The Terp was with us.
You mean the interpreter?
Yeah, the interpreter. They recognize each other. The guys, there's like 30 people waiting to go in and talk to this general. And they're all there to bribe him and try to earn his favor. And he's just a little Jabba the Hutt dude in there, And we just walk right past them all, weapons at ready, and go into his office.
Okay.
And there are like 3 or 4 elders sitting on pillows with their bare feet, rubbing their feet. And there's like 4 other officers in there. And they are very uncomfortable. We just go in there and set up a perimeter, and I began to bark right at the guy and have the interpreter interpret for me.
Well, I mean, I can understand why they would be very uncomfortable, but you're on a police base with presumably an awful lot of armed police. And Carson, you've just told us that the Afghan police can be very corrupt. Are you not worried about a firefight while you're inside the building?
No, we projected strength. They didn't want to have a firefight with us. I mean, I'm not saying this to be arrogant, but we're the Americans. We have a lot, for all they know, we have helicopters or aircraft above us. So, but we didn't. We simply just rolled in there ourselves. And I just told the guy, I said, you have my car. And he's like, what car are you talking about? And so I said, you know what car we're talking about? I said, we've been trying for 4 days. It's nice of you to ask you this car back. And so he opened the door. The car keys are there. I said, we're going to leave here with that car. If any of your guys do anything crazy, and I told him, and I'm not proud of this, I said, but I was very angry and I was very upset. I said, not only are we going to kill anyone that does anything, but I'm coming back in here. I'm going to personally kill you.
Oh, Carson.
Oh, and what did Jabba the Hutt say at that point, or do?
He just simply said, please take your car and leave. We're sorry. And we took the car and left.
Wow. My blood pressure and my heart rate are through the roof right now. Just imagining you going at this guy. I mean, taking an amazingly dangerous risk. But I guess it worked so far.
It did. We get our car back, but now we're in a dilemma. Do we even send the source into Pakistan with this car? Because we've kind of announced to this entire police station who we are, what the car represents.
Yeah, they clearly know how important the car is.
But there's no direct link between the source and the car. And so what they would have to do is put that together, that our source owns this car, and Taliban would have to find this out. And we debate it. We debate it back and forth. I would not consider this my worst case. My worst case occurred where 3 of the agents on my team were killed, with 10 total on a mission. I would consider this my most disappointing case in that we'd never sent the vehicle and him into Pakistan to get the target.
Was that because you all were debating it and decided it was too dangerous?
We did. We just felt that, first of all, too much time had passed. The source's credibility with Maftoon, he's asking him constantly, where are you? You should have been here already. And then the only way of getting the car back was to go back and physically take it. It was a situation where we didn't send the car in. We didn't send the car. We didn't send the source. And as a result, the last time I heard, Maftoon was still alive.
Wow.
What? Oh, that's
Wow.
terrible news.
I'm sorry. I wish I could bring you better news. At least I scared the police captain, police general for you. I mean, that was the best I could do.
Well, I mean, obviously, that's one of the things that is interesting about this case was what you had to go through to try to set up an operation and all to have the operation not even go. But I still have some more questions, in particular about Maftoon. He's on the kill list. You've set up this car. You had to go back and get the car. First, were you able ever to use the car in any other operations?
No, unfortunately, our tour was ending. And we had approximately 3 weeks left in the tour before we returned to the United States. And when I returned for my 3rd tour in Afghanistan, I went right to Kandahar. I didn't even operate out of Jalalabad. So the car, the informant, Maftoon, they were in the rearview mirror. We just didn't have the assets. We didn't, I came back to Afghanistan well over a year later after this happened. And we were never involved in tracking or trying to capture him ever again.
Well, and Carson, one of the things that we try to tell our listeners is to take them behind police lines and answer questions that they may have about how these kinds of operations impact the people that are working on them. So you had to leave it. The operation you wanted to complete and work so hard on was never completed. How did that affect you and really your morale and the morale of your team?
We were very disappointed. On the one hand, when you guys are talking about a vehicle that has a suicide vest occupant as well as anti-tank mines, we were euphoric with respect to all of the planning was coming together. We were going to find an opportunity with a high confidence that Maftoon was going to be in the vehicle, and we were going to either capture him or he would kill himself or we would assist him in that endeavor. So that all came crashing down with the informant arriving at our doorstep without a vehicle. So it was frustrating, and it was doubly frustrating that it was the Afghan police that were in their own corrupt ways of trying to capitalize and keep this car were keeping us from doing this mission.
Yeah, well, maybe they were corrupt enough to be taking money from the guy that you were trying to kill. And, maybe there was an actual connection there.
Yeah, we don't know. We won't ever know.
Well, and also, Carson, I know you said that you left soon after this or redeployed somewhere else, but did you ever hear about Maftoon and those anti-tank mines?
No, I personally never found out anything would happen with respect to those mines. But later on, I was in the Pentagon and they were planning another mission and they were talking about Maftoon. And this was probably 4 or 5 years after I was in Afghanistan.
Wow.
So I know he's still alive. He's still out there. I think Maftoon to this day is probably still alive.
Unbelievable. I mean, that certainly speaks to his, I guess, level of sophistication in his operational security, that he hasn't been killed in all of these years when he must still be very high on any military kill list.
He is a wily target. Unfortunately, we were not able to introduce ourselves to him.
Wow. Well, Carson, that's one of the most frustrating types of operations in any law enforcement or military venture. I mean, it happens a lot, especially here in the United States when we have rules and we stick to them. Now, of course, there are people who work for the justice system who break the rules. And unfortunately, that ends up in false convictions or other horrible things happening. And obviously, we want no part of those things. So we stick to the rules. And sometimes that means we have to, for protection of our sources or protection of victims or protection of the justice system, we have to let a bad guy go. And for all of us who joined the justice system to do good and help people, that's like the most frustrating thing. And so I feel for you on this one.
Very well said. I mean, obviously, no case is worth your integrity. And so you act in the interest of the citizens, of securing our borders, protecting our citizens, and you act in interest of the system itself. And so obviously, you would not want to corrupt it with your own actions. There's no reason to lie. Sometimes there's a difference in rules and laws. There's not a chance you're going to break a law. But sometimes there's like little admin rules that maybe get bent a little bit. And I'm just honest about that, but nothing that is even close to violating a law.
Well, and speaking of rule breaking or bending, Carson, you mentioned that when you all went to confront this corrupt police commander, that you maybe didn't have the permission of your bosses. Did you ever face any repercussions for that? Or because the outcome was favorable, people kind of decided it all worked out?
I've never really talked about this, except, here I am telling, you guys about it on a podcast. But no, I mean, we were very vulnerable with respect to oversight in our career. It would not have been appreciated. I don't mind saying it. We would have been considered very reckless and very cowboy-like, but it just wasn't going to sit well with me. It was a decision that I made, and I would have fell on the sword and taken full responsibility if we were ever investigated for doing such a thing. But, listen, we went in there and we told the guy we want our car back and don't do anything stupid. And he turned it over the car of his own free will. It was our car. And so would I have done it again? I would have, because I felt that lives were at risk and the stakes were very high. Am I bending a rule to save lives? Yes. Am I breaking a law? No.
And did this particular operation, Carson, the chase for Maftoon, did it have a code name you can share?
No, we didn't have an operational name for it at the time. Plus, I don't. That would be able to make a link administratively if anyone wants to come after me for what I'm telling you. I'm not going to assist them in that endeavor.
Yes, and now we'll just say that during the course of this podcast, we used fake names like Maftoon as if that were real, and other names. To make it sound like this was real, something else, but it isn't. So Don't ever listen to us when we talk about specific names in Afghanistan or anything like that, and pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
That's true.
All right, well, Carson, we appreciate your candor and the way you tell a story. It's unfortunate that the results came out the way they did. And that's part of the life of somebody who's in law enforcement. And that's what we're trying to share with our listeners, that it's not all wonderful things and happy outcomes. And these things are things that you carry with you for the rest of your life. And the frustration of not being able to get this guy and the thought of what kind of damage that guy must be doing out there, both of those things probably weigh pretty heavily.
I can look back and say that I did everything I possibly could have done. And probably more than many people in my position would have done.
Oh, I think there's no doubt about that, Carson.
I think that's a safe assumption, Carson.
Well, thank you so much for coming back to Best Case, Worst Case. And we hope that your life has simplified to some extent after you left the DEA. And we hope to be having you on again sometime soon.
All right. Thanks a lot. I enjoyed it. Take care.
All right. Take care. And for now, signing off on Best Case, Worst Case. Thank you for listening. Best Case, Worst Case is an XG production. Produced by Jim Clementi at Empire Studios, LA. Engineered and edited by Mike Thal. Music composed and performed by Simba Sumba. And hosted by Wonder.
You can listen to Best Case, Worst Case on your favorite listening app. We are on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you listen to podcasts.
If you want to do something about child sexual abuse, Darkness to Light can help. Did you know that more than 90% of the time children are sexually abused by someone they know?
Jim, this isn't about stranger danger. It's about learning the true risks. Darkness to Light's training can help prevent, recognize, and react to child sexual abuse in your community.
When you make the decision to get involved, kids can be protected. It starts with you.
Visit www.d2l.org to take the training and learn more.
That's D2L.org.